remind ourselves of what you said to me 12 months ago.
We've now wiped the slate clean under the mismanagement and the chaos of the previous government. It's now on us. We've put everything out into the open.
Okay.
We've set the spending envelope for the course of this parliament. We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
Did Rachel Reeves deliberately lie to the British public to justify hammering us with higher taxes? In this video, you will see Trevor Phillips on Sky News press Rachel Reeves on the budget numbers and her claims about that 22 billion black hole. More than that, we are going to examine what real leadership demands when it comes to principles of truth and accountability, because the people who pay the taxes and the salaries deserve nothing less than the full truth from those in power. Before we get into the details, if you love diving into political issues and enjoy hearing a principled take on them, then hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to join the conversation. It will help our channel reach a wider audience.
That happened between the spring forecast and the forecast that the Office of Budget Responsibility provided for this budget was a big downgrade in productivity. Now, the OBR have been really clear. That reflects the legacy of the previous 14 years, not anything that this government has done in the last 16 months. But nevertheless, that productivity downgrade means that they forecast tax receipts are going to be £16 billion lower, which is why I gave a speech at the beginning of November saying that the OBR downgrade has had big impact on the public finances, and it was why I would need to ask people to contribute more.
Well, let's unpack that. We'll come to the speech at the beginning of November and the OBR in a second.
Yeah.
But let's just deal with the simple fact that what you said last year turned out not to be true. The scale of the tax rises this year is not far off. Last year it was 40 billion. This year is 26 billion. Literally, it just wasn't true. And, it's not a fault, but I think we should just make sure that we start on the same footing, that what you thought you were going to be able to do turned out not to be the case.
I think that is true, but for reasons on this, not in my control. The Office of Budget Responsibility rightly provides independent forecasts. Now, it's up to them to justify the timing of the productivity review. They are very clear the productivity reflects the last 2 years.
Because I want to come to that. But you've just said it because of things that were not in your control. But literally in that clip, you said, this is now on us.
Yes.
You said 12 months ago, everything that happens from now is my choice. It is on us.
Well, look, the Office of Budget Responsibility, you're not interviewing them, you're interviewing me, but they decided
to do a review.
Well, they decided to do a review of productivity. That is the Conservative legacy. The Office of Budget Responsibility are really clear that productivity downgrade does not reflect anything that this government has done.
You want to be honest? When you spoke to the country on November the 4th, you warned that we'd all have to contribute to filling this financial black hole. But you already knew at that moment that the OBR had assessed that your plans at that point, let's be clear, the plans that you'd given them at that point would deliver a surplus of £4 billion. Why did you lie to the country?
Well, first of all, that was pre any measures, as they've been very clear. But if I was on this programme today and I said, I've got a £4.2 billion surplus, you would have said, and rightly so, that is not enough, Chancellor. That would have been the lowest surplus.
Never mind what I would have said. Why didn't you say to the country, you know what? I've got 4 billion. I don't think it's enough. I want to do some other things. Why didn't you make it clear that the OBR had already told you you had the 4.4, a little bit more than £4 billion surplus on the plans that you had given them?
The way that the OBR forecast works is that they do the forecast before any plan. So this was pre any measures. But the just over £4 billion surplus was not enough. I said in that speech that I wanted to achieve 3 things in the budget. Tackling the cost of living, which is why I took £150 off of energy bills and froze prescription charges and rail fares. I wanted to continue to cut NHS waiting lists, which is why I protected NHS spending. And I wanted to bring the debt and the borrowing down, which is one of the reasons why I increased the headroom £4 billion of headroom would not have been enough, and it would not give the Bank of England space to continue to cut interest rates.
You didn't tell us that you had, at that point, been advised you had the £4 billion before any measures, was that you knew you wanted to do the things that you did do on welfare and reversing on the winter fuel allowance, which you knew about, and so on. So essentially, the point here is that you knew that you were going to want tax rises for decisions that you wanted to make on welfare. It wasn't something that was done to you. These were your choices, and that's why this issue is important. That at that point, you didn't say to the country, we're more or less in balance, but I am going to ask you for more taxes because I want to make a choice to spend more money on welfare, for example. Why didn't you say that at that time? What you said to us is, big black hole, it's terrible.
£4 billion is clearly not enough fiscal headroom. It would have been the lowest headroom.
And you made a choice. You made a choice to double the fiscal headroom.
Yes,
but my point is, you made that choice.
Yes, I did.
And you didn't tell us at the point when you said, you warned us we were going to have to pay, that we were going to have to pay for choices that you were making now.
Yes, and I said in that speech that I wanted to reduce the debt and reduce borrowing. So I increased that fiscal headroom. I'm very happy.
You didn't tell us you were going to tax us more in order to give you an extra £10 billion fiscal headroom.
No, Trevor, that's just not true. In that speech...
No, you didn't say it. Where did you say that in that speech?
I said in that speech that I wanted to increase our resilience by increasing the headroom. I was very clear in that speech.
And welfare spending.
Well, one of the things I did in the budget was lift 450,000 children out of poverty. That was funded through cracking down on tax avoidance, more measures in the budget, and introducing a gambling tax. I always said that to reduce child poverty, it had to be fully costed and fully funded. So the gambling tax and cracking down on tax avoidance and evasion was used to reduce child poverty. That was the right thing to do. I'm very happy to defend my choices on the cost of living, reducing child poverty, reducing NHS waiting lists, and building that financial resilience into our numbers.
Let me put this question to you in maybe a less aggressive way. Why can't you say, I'm a Labour Chancellor. I decided at that point I was going to ask for more taxes in order to do Labour things, which involves particularly raising the amount we spend on welfare. Why can't you just say that's what you decided to do?
Well, the three objectives I had in the budget were to cut the cost of living, which is why we gave £150 off of everyone's NHS bills and froze prescription charges and rail fares. I said in that speech at the beginning of November that I wanted to cut NHS waiting lists. Both of those are very Labour things to do, but also I wanted to ensure that our economy was resilient to withstand shocks like conflicts, like trade barriers, and that's why I wanted to increase the headroom. To do those things in the context of a downgrade in our productivity, which cost £16 billion, I needed to increase taxes. And I was honest and frank about that in the speech that I gave at the beginning of November. I kept that contribution that everyone needs to make as low as possible through a number of progressive reforms.
You do keep mentioning
Those are Labour choices.
You do keep mentioning the downgrade, but actually you knew at the time from the OBR that downgrade had been balanced by wage increases, tax revenues from wage increases.
Let me address that
and
head
inflation.
on. Let me address that head on, Trevor. The biggest single factor for the lower tax revenues is the productivity downgrade. But in addition to that, the OBR said before the measures that I took in the budget that inflation was going to be higher and that would result in higher tax receipts. But that's not a good thing because higher inflation, inflating tax revenues...
Nobody thinks it's a great thing. All I'm saying is...
What I'm saying is that...
You keep saying
Trevor, I wanted to address this, and it is really important that people understand this. Because of the measures that I took in the budget, inflation is going to be 0.4 percentage points lower next year than they originally forecast because of our cost of living measures to reduce inflation. And so I needed to address as well the higher inflation that the OBR I said would otherwise result. So there were a number of things happening in the economy, lower productivity growth, but also higher inflation, and I needed to address both of those.
I wish we could talk in
budget.
more detail about that, but no doubt we'll come back and talk about whether that's worked in inflation in a year's time. Now, but the leader of the opposition...
Let's see, but the OBR say 0.4 percentage points off of inflation, in part because of £150 off of energy bills.
Okay. Look, the leader of the opposition said about the choices that you made that, I'm quoting here, for months, Reeves has lied to the public to justify record tax hikes to pay for more welfare. Did you lie?
Look, I'm a Labour Chancellor. I want to reduce child poverty. I make no apologies for that. This will be the biggest ever reduction in child poverty in a parliament ever. And I'm proud to be the Chancellor that lifts 500,000 kids out of poverty. That means kids not going to bed hungry. It means kids not waking up in cold and damp homes. And I am proud, and I'm very happy to defend the choices I've made.
I just asked you, did you lie? And I have to say, the answer I was looking for was no. I didn't hear the word no.
But you also asked about welfare in that question.
No, I just asked you, did you lie?
Of course I didn't.
Good, okay. By the way, was the Prime Minister informed through all of this process?
Yes,
and he was right there with you on it all.
Yes, of course.
Decisions you made, what you said on November the 4th.
Yes, we are a partnership. We have a budget board. The Prime Minister, Keir, and myself met regularly to discuss the budget and the choices, because these are the choices of this government. And I'm really proud of the choices that we made.
The government has a responsibility to tell the public the truth about what they're doing or about to do. Not half-truth they can hide behind later and say, well, we never actually lied. That is exactly what Rachel Reeves did with this budget. You've just seen the clips. She stood there and kept talking about a 22 billion black hole that simply did not exist. The Office for Budget Responsibility had already made it clear to her that the books actually showed a surplus of almost 5 billion. Yet she repeated that figure again and again. There must never be room for leaders to mislead the very people who pay taxes and pay their salaries. The OBR must bear some of the blame too. Their job is oversight. They owe clarity to the taxpayers, not just private conversations with the Chancellor. They should have spoken up loudly and early, rather than staying silent while that false 22 billion was used for months to justify everything that followed. Because in order to push through her big spending plans on welfare and to keep her far-left backbenchers happy, Rachel Reeves needed that story. She needed it to bring in the biggest tax rises we have ever seen in one budget. This budget was all about politics, not about the people. It was about protecting herself rather than protecting the interests of the British people. True leaders put their interests, their credibility, everything on the line to see the country succeed. What Rachel Reeves has done is put a plaster on a very big wound that is swelling and oozing with nasty pus about to burst. Already, the people who can see what is happening, the ones who still have the means to leave, are packing up and taking their families to places that offer a better future. And every family that goes make the burden heavier for everyone who stays. When you accept high office, one thing has to change. It is no longer just about the people who voted for you. Your duty is to the whole country. Real leadership requires two things that can never be separated: speaking the truth and then standing fully accountable when you get it wrong, for when you have lied to the public. And the worst part of this is that in Britain today, politicians can say things that are not true, do things that are wrong, and nothing happens to them. There is no consequence. Is this a brand of democracy they are trying to sell us? One very wise ancient leader said, "It is the truth that sets you free." But freedom only lasts when leaders carry the full weight of accountability for what they say and what they do. Truth has a cost. It always has. Yet it is the only thing that brings life to the soul of a nation and to the soul of any leader worth following. We cannot keep walking this road where lies have no consequences. So please, share this video with everyone you know. Let's make truth and accountability the two things we never again let our leaders forget. If you have benefited in any way from this video, please subscribe, like, share, and be sure to leave us a comment.